voted by you as the nation's best news presenter at the prestigious Trick Awards.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes along with Albie Amancona, Emily Carver, Benjamin Butterworth and Patrick Christie's. Tonight on the show, it's time, folks, that actually we got what we voted for when it comes to border controls.
Sadiq Khan's stooge, Amy LeMay, should not have been awarded Freedom of the City of London for her failure over London's nightlife.
Why we need to bring back the disapproving glare when it comes to antisocial behaviour.
Why it's critical for equality that we keep inheritance tax.
It is time that we had a minister for men.
It's 8 o'clock and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5, the best Saturday night takeaway that you could order. Expect fiery debate, spicy opinions and a huge topping of fun. Every week, join Albie, Emily, Benjamin and myself, along with a guest star. Tonight, it's none other than Twitter's Patrick Christie's.
He's back! Now, the premise of the show is simple. Each of us gets 60 seconds to outline our argument about any chosen topic. Then we all pile in and the first starts to fly. And of course, as always, we want to know your views as well. Please do get in touch by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com. But before we start tearing each other apart, it is time for your Saturday night news with Ray Allison.
Good evening to you. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom and our top story this hour. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace will quit the government at the next cabinet reshuffle and not stand as an MP at the next general election. That's according to the Sunday Times. It follows speculation that Mr Wallace would leave in the autumn after 4 years in the role. He's currently the local MP for Wyre and Preston North, which will disappear at the next election after boundary changes. It comes just days after the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, rejected comments from Mr Wallace, suggesting that Ukraine should show, quote, gratitude for the military support it has been given. A fire has broken out at the Royal Albion Hotel in Brighton. Footage of the blaze has been shared online, with witnesses saying the flames are spreading quickly across the roof and top floor of the building, with winds spurring those flames on. Emergency services are on the scene. They've been moving people a safe distance away from the incident. Brighton and Hove City Council have announced the closure of nearby roads. Sussex Police is asking members of the public to avoid the seafront area and find alternative routes of travel. Parts of the UK have been experiencing strong winds and thunderstorms, with yellow Met Office warnings in place across the south of England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. The Goodwood Festival of Speed had to cancel today's events for the first time in its 30-year history, and London's Kaleidoscope Festival at Alexandra Palace has been called off too. Weather journalist Nathan Rao told us that high winds can be more dangerous at this time of year.
Across the south of England, that's London, the south east, the east of England, Leicester, Leicestershire, Essex, all that sort of area. That's for gusts of up to 55 miles per hour, which doesn't seem that high, but remember that the trees are in full leaf at the moment, so strong gusts can cause more damage than they would do, say, for example, in November when all the leaves are down.
Junior doctors have been striking for a third day in England. The BMA has warned the government that their members will not back down over demands for a 35% pay rise. That's despite the Prime Minister adopting the recommendations of independent pay review bodies and making a final pay offer of 6%. The 5-day strike, the longest in NHS history, runs until Tuesday morning. One of the last 2 ships exporting grain from Ukraine under an agreement with Russia has arrived now in Istanbul. The Black Sea grain deal, which expires on Monday, has enabled Ukraine to export grain and food safely over the past year, despite the war. Ukraine is a major supplier of key crops like sunflower oil and barley. Moscow is threatening to pull out of the agreement and is calling for Western sanctions to ease. We're on TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn too. This is GB News. Now, let's get back to the Saturday 5.
Yes, it is Saturday night. You're with the Saturday 5. I'm Emily Carver, and I can promise that you are in for a very lively hour. So let's crack on straight away with tonight's first debate. Now then, Darren is going to tell us why those supposedly non-partisan members of the House of Lords seeking to block the Rwanda plan should take illegal migrants into their own homes. Take it away, Darren.
Absolutely right. I mean, is voting in Britain even worth it today? The public support the Rwanda plan, yet the House of Lords, all unelected 800 and odd of them, have shot it down 20 times. Democracy overridden by cronies. These so-called noble lords act as anti-democratic parasites, draining our democratic system. They claim to be cross-party, a cross-party check against the kind of inhumanity that we plebs keep voting for. Cross-party my foot. Those residing in that gilded gold chamber share the same left liberal outlook as each other, ignoring the impact of illegal migrants because they're shielded in gated communities. They avoid the consequences of social housing, of education, of healthcare, and crime caused by some in taxpayer-funded hotels. Now, the Archbishop of Warwick, of course, in the House of Lords, he questioned during one session why the government ignores the plight of women and children. Does anyone know any women and children that he's speaking about coming over on those boats? Maybe he should get himself to Kent and witness the row after row of fighting-age young men coming over the border. Meanwhile, our cost of living crisis hits hard, but Lords won't feel it, of course. The Home Office is splurging £6 million a day of your money, with 500 grand of that wasted on empty hotel beds. So if you fancy a holiday at home, you can forget it. You can't find a hotel unless you've come over here in a dinghy from France. And if you live near a military base, prepare for 1,700 asylum seekers as neighbours kiss goodbye to their rural retreat. Now, our war heroes, of course, are honoured by Parliament every single year, but living veterans are often forgotten. A 98-year-old cancer-stricken veteran was recently evicted and left homeless, while Lords champion the needs of illegal migrants. If you ask me, it is nothing short of a damn disgrace. So can we still call Britain a democracy? I think unrest may follow if a broken ballot box is the conclusion made by the many. So here's an idea. Let's place migrants in the Lords' lavish rooms and let them experience what real Britain knows about our transformation into a lawless and borderless hellscape. If our privileged peers want wide open borders, let them suffer the consequences. Now I'm going to turn to Benjamin Butterworth and say, I assume you agreed with every single word of that.
I mean, you know, it sounds like you want an elected House of Lords, like you want to overthrow
I was just thinking that.
I would like to abolish the House of Lords. I have concluded.
Well, you're
absolutely
wrong twice and we're only 8 minutes into the show. Because the truth is, it is a revising chamber that is meant to make our laws better, that is meant to look at those things where politicians are being politicians. The Rwanda deal has cost, what, 120 million quid. No one's been sent there. And even if we do, it'll cost as much as sending them to Eton. So how is that a good deal?
There's supposed to be a revising chamber, not a chamber that puts forward their own policy.
Yeah.
And what the Archbishop is trying to do at the moment is introduce some kind of 10-year refugee plan. Now, on the face of it, that seems fine, but if you're putting stuff forward as well, including additional amendments to bills that are actual policy and not amendments, then that is a massive problem. Look, Policy Exchange did a report on this recently. Instead of making disproportionately working-class areas suffer as a result of the migrant crisis in the Channel, it is time, in my view, to just say, right, anyone in the southeast of England, if you've got 4 spare beds, then you're going to have to start housing them. And watch the support for the illegal migration bill go through the roof.
I mean, Emily, do you think it's deliberate, putting them in working-class communities and saying, well, you know, they won't grumble?
Well, it may well be that they don't get as many grumbles. I know, but I think it is so widespread now that it's not just working-class areas any longer. I mean, if you look to Theresa May's constituency, for example, in Maidenhead, Windsor and Maidenhead, quite a well-to-do area. There are many hotels now, but I do think it's disproportionately in poorer areas of this country, and then people are up in arms when people don't like it. I mean, it's hardly surprising, but I think Patrick made a very good point there, rebutting Benjamin's point. The Lords is there to revise legislation, to propose amendments to make that legislation better. It is not there to try to wreck legislation itself to bulldoze.
But hang on.
Isn't that exactly what the Lords have done in this case? They found the parts of the legislation which they thought were unworkable and sent it back to the Commons. That's the job of the Lords.
No,
I think unless you're going to literally call for the Lords to be abolished and we should replace it with whatever, and that's another argument, I don't really know what your point is.
Well, I definitely
You're
have
wrong
come
there
to that
because,
view.
yes, some of them were proposing improvements, tweaks here and there, but there were wrecking amendments. It's well reported, well known.
Well, I mean,
Emily,
but on the point about House of Lords reform, because that's actually how we're going to solve the problem that Darren dislikes, do you all agree that we should reform the House of Lords? Are you going to vote for Keir Starmer at the next election on that basis?
Well, do you know what? We're going to get on to inheritance tax shortly, and I might well be voting for Keir Starmer at this rate, because the Conservative Party are anything but bloody conservative.
And yet you want to abolish the House of Lords. That sounds very conservative.
Yes, well, actually, because I think that it's gone far beyond its original purpose. It's become a cesspit of cronyism.
There's a Conservative majority in the House of Lords. You called it a left
There
liberal
isn't a Conservative
establishment.
majority in the House
Yes,
of Lords.
there is, because Keir Starmer said he wanted to appoint Labour Lords if he becomes a Prime Minister, so there can be a Labour majority. There is a Conservative majority.
The single biggest party in the House of Lords is the Conservatives, but if you add up every single other person from every single other party and also non-Conservatives, so non-party political members, then they do outnumber the Conservatives that are in there at the moment.
So the largest party in the House of Lords is the Conservative Party?
Yes, but they're on their own, effectively, right? There's one right-wing party in there. You've got maybe a handful of DUP members. The idea that it's balanced.
So scrap the Lords, have an elected chamber.
I don't believe in scrapping the Lords, but I do think that there is an important difference between trying to improve legislation by proposing amendments and tweaks and trying to bulldoze.
Can I just say
is the key point.
quickly, whatever we do about it, at the moment, we cannot have a system whereby a policy is overwhelmingly popular with the British public, a Conservative government or any government with a big majority gets it voted through Parliament on a couple of occasions at times, and then it keeps getting knocked back. That isn't democracy.
But that's exactly how our system works. Only if it's in the manifesto can they.
Well, Brexit was in the manifesto.
And Rwanda was not in the manifesto.
Brexit certainly
Right, we're going to have to move on. Sorry, guys.
Oh.
See what people at home think about that. Should we abolish the House of Lords? Up next, it is Benjamin, and he's going to tell us about why he thinks we should be proud to pay inheritance tax, and why it's crucial for fairness and equality. Off you go, Benjamin.
Yeah, that's right. From abolishing the House of Lords to maybe abolishing inheritance tax. It's reported in the papers today that the Tories are thinking about getting rid of inheritance tax, that 40% that you pay on a certain sum of money for everybody, in order to try and win over some of those southern seats where former Tories aren't going to back them at the election. Well, it seems like the Tories have finally woken up to the idea that they might not have been a low-tax government. But for me, the idea that they would give all this money to the richest people in the country, inheriting very expensive houses, meanwhile the rest of us who go to work have the highest taxes in 70 years, would be completely wrong. Now, it's a popular policy because a lot of people think that they will pay inheritance tax. But you only pay it on over £500,000, or if there's two parents, over £1 million. So how many people in the country is that? 4%. So it's almost certain that you don't pay inheritance tax anyway. So if we get rid of inheritance tax on that 4%, it's a £7 billion payout to the richest families in Britain. Meanwhile, millions, 11 million, can't afford to get the basics on the table or put the heating on at the moment. I'm proud to pay inheritance tax, and I think it's fairer to charge inheritance than it is earned income. What do you think?
Oh, my goodness. How can you be proud to pay a death tax? It's immoral.
Because why should rich families get £7 billion quid? You have to pay.
How many nurses' wages have those rich families paid for throughout the course of their life? How many teachers' salaries? How many public sector salaries? How many potentially, in some cases, millions and millions of pounds in tax have those people paid because they've had a bit of aspiration, because they wanted to go out and earn a pound note? Maybe they've had a bit of luck as well, or whatever, and you want to rip it literally from their cold, dead hands.
No, I actually think you sound incredibly entitled, Patrick.
Really?
Because I didn't earn what my parents earned. You know, it is unearned income. It is not mine. And I think when you're looking at how you cover the costs of things like the NHS, I would rather it be taken from that, which is basically a gift to me. I did nothing to earn it. I'd rather that pay for nurses than my day-to-day wage.
Benjamin, you do realise that it's not your money, right? It has already been, and the people who have the assets have already paid tax on their income. then they pay tax on their assets as they go along, and then they also probably have paid capital gains tax.
But Emily, let me just say one, hang on, let me just say one thing. You know as well as I do that the generation that is dying now, people in their 70s or 80s, the vast majority of their wealth, vast majority of their wealth is not earned because it's inflation, massive rises in their house prices. So they didn't earn it.
But look, what I want to ask,
but only privileged younger people. I think there's a point here. Is it really the right priority for a government to be removing a tax for the top 4% in society instead of taking tax off earned income? I think it would be much better if Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt proposed at the next general election that they were going to cut part of income tax, that they were perhaps going to cut corporation tax or business rates or national insurance contributions, taxes that are actually going to contribute to economic growth and put more money back into people's pockets.
Well, I want to ask
Inheritance
Darren,
tax doesn't do that.
We have a red wall Tory government, right? They got there on northern seats. There aren't many northern seats where people's houses are costing £500,000.
Absolutely, and do you know, I have quite a nuanced view on this, which is, you know, remember when Theresa May tried bringing in the social care scheme, where she basically said, we'll sell some of your house to pay for part of your social care and it'll be capped at a certain point, and that went down like a bag of sick. I imagine that is what lost her the election. People really care about their homes, their properties, and what they own and what they can pass on to their children. I get all of that. I just think at a time when we're saying to people, you're going to part with 50% of your earned income right now, so people like my family in the Red Wall who definitely don't have assets that'll be culpable to pay inheritance tax, are in some of them paying 50% marginal tax, and you think, hang on a minute, that's not right.
I completely agree. It's not the right priority at this moment in time.
But it's wrong.
Just
it's morally wrong.
Yes,
I agree with that.
And looking at inheritance tax, I don't think it's a good tax. There are so many exemptions anyway that people with big assets can hide away anyway. So it's the middle-class people who happen to live in the southeast and their homes.
But there's no good tax.
Issue of
it's just the wrong priority.
Yeah.
Why is it being brought up now?
Why should rich kids get richer?
It's an issue of fairness, right? Because people are feeling right now that the state is very unfair. You cover it on your show every single day, where people are saying, why are we not doing anything on illegal migrants? They're getting a better deal than we are, and all of these other issues. And they're saying, I imagine, Patrick, they will turn around and say, why actually take away a tax that only impacts 4% of people when you could take away a tax or reduce a tax that impacts all of them?
I absolutely 100% agree with that. I do also think, there's no question this is not the main priority for the country, but just because it's not the main priority right now doesn't mean you should still not do something that I think is a good thing. For me, it's just a moral issue. I do take what you're saying, but for me, it's a moral thing. If somebody has dragged themselves up from very, very poor beginnings in life...
They probably haven't.
Well, excuse me, that's really offensive. No, that is really,
the whole
really
problem with inheritance tax is that you're giving a load of money to people because they're from money. That's not pulling yourself up by bootstraps.
Rubbish. You are completely wrong, and you know you're wrong, and you're just doing it because you're on the telly and you want to impress your lefty mates, right? Loads of people...
I don't have any mates,
30 or 40 years ago started out on building sites and worked their way up, and then by the time that they retired, they maybe had a construction company and they got a nice house, and they worked all their lives. They died of something like asbestos inhalation or a death brought on by some kind of work-related illness, and they want to pass that on to their family.
Those people are not millionaires that get to benefit from this.
On that note, we've got to finish on that one. But that was a great debate, guys. Still to come tonight, Patrick Christys is back. He's going to dissect the idea of a minister for men. And Albie gives us his 2 cents on the decimation of London. And in Carver's Palaver, that's me, is it time to bring back the quintessentially British disapproving stare to tackle antisocial behaviour? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, cheers very much for emails about tonight's topics. Kathleen has written in and she says, we bought our house 40 years ago and paid for it with hard-earned tax income. It should now be ours to do with as we wish. I don't want it taxed at my death to help pay millions to house illegal migrants. We are not rich, just hard-working. I think some people do definitely share that view.
Absolutely.
Now, it's time for our next debate. Up next, it's none other than Patrick Christie's. Should the UK have a minister for men? Patrick's going to give us his 2 cents. Take it away, Patrick.
Right, yes, I do think that we should have a minister for men. Everybody else gets a minister. Why not the men? It's not a fashionable thing to say this, and the usual types are going to absolutely slaughter me, but I've made a little list of some of the reasons why I think men specifically need direct representation from a minister. So, they need someone to stand up and help to fight the epidemic of male suicide. In education, boys have been outperformed by girls since the mid-90s. 9 out of 10 homeless people are men. Men die 5 years younger than women. 1 in 3 domestic abuse cases are men. Divorce, men tend to pay out a lot more, even if they don't want the divorce and it wasn't their fault. And parental rights as well. Apparently, 150 dads a day are denied access to their children, which also, as far as my research shows as well, means that the access to the paternal grandfather and grandmother link as well is shattered. I think that's an absolute problem. Look, I do think, whilst it might not be fashionable, at the end of the day, everybody else seems to get some form of representation. Why can't we have a minister to stand up for men?
Do you know, I actually think that we don't talk about men enough, in that, you know, there are so many which speak so much about body issues and what Love Island is doing to women. Well, what's Love Island and other things like that? Instagram, even pornography, dare I say.
Yeah.
What's that doing to men? Body image issues. And, you know, you look on the tube. I was on the tube earlier today and it says, please don't stare in big... Who do you think that's for? That's aimed at men, right? Saying, don't look at women, don't do anything wrong, you're the problem, you're the issue. And I think men hear this time and again.
The reason I would say it, and I'll get your view, Albie, is because of all of those different little issues that I've raised, not that little, but the issues that I've raised there, these are all things that can be dealt with at a national level and for a variety of different people. I think it would just be nice to have a specific pair of eyes looking at, right, when it comes to homelessness, for example, what we're doing about male homelessness, and just have that eye on it.
I think a minister for men is a brilliant idea. It's an idea that I have agreed with for a very long time, actually.
Really?
Because there are some really profound issues that men are going through in this country. Let's take mental health, for example. I have struggled with mental health a lot in the past year. And it is not something that a lot of men feel comfortable talking about. It is not something which seems to get that much attention from government. That one of the biggest, in fact, the biggest killer of men under, I think it's 40, is suicide. But that statistic, that's not changed since the first time I looked at that statistic about 5 years ago. So I think it is time, actually, for a government minister to have this as part of their portfolio so they can solve the problem.
Emily?
I'm not sure a minister is going to do much. I mean...
A minister?
The Minister for Women was made in 1997 by Blair, and it was taken up by Harriet Harman. She was the first in that position for the Minister for Women. It's just a made-up thing to make people feel good, right? I don't think it's actually going to solve any issues. But your points that you make are really, really important. I think, and I don't want to speak for men because I am a woman, but I do think that some men feel undervalued. They're not quite sure what their position is in society. If they like Andrew Tate, then they're told they're a monster. If they don't like Andrew Tate, then they're not hard enough. You know, I think it is quite confusing, and it does seem to be all about women. It's quite a lot of the time. I think in schools as well, there's a lot about how, you know, boys need to be taught not to be aggressors. They need to be taught not to be domestic abusers. They need to be taught all of this. But what do they need to be taught that's positive, you know, that's not all centred around how to be nice to women?
Go on, what would be the problem with a minister for men?
I mean, look, there are definite examples. The one about suicide being the main killer of men under 40, and also in schools, boys tend to get lower grades than girls for quite some years now. So clearly there are problems there. But ultimately, I think men in this country are to blame for a lot of these issues. We have toxic masculinity where men or boys are trained by their fathers to hide their emotions, to not talk about who they are, to be aggressive, that's the only way to behave. And that's why you have so many women who are victims of domestic abuse at the hands of men. You have so many men who behave irresponsibly. And I actually think that, you know, some of those toxic masculine men on television should start taking account, not just get a minister.
It's an interesting point that you make there, because, again, I was just doing the research before. So 2/3 of domestic abuse cases, the woman is the victim, OK, which does mean that 1/3 of the time, men are the victim. And how often do you actually hear about that? Because that's still a huge amount of people.
But I think the problem with domestic violence is whether or not it is the man that's a victim or the woman that is a victim. Clearly, if the woman's a victim, then it's a problem with men. And if your point is that toxic masculinity is causing domestic abuse towards women, then surely if there was a minister whose specific portfolio was to deal with men's issues, wouldn't that help with the domestic violence against women?
I mean, all I'd say is there is already rather a lot of men in Parliament and in government. Why do you need another one? The difference is that women are underrepresented on an institutional level.
I don't think we ever celebrate what makes men different from women.
Go on.
I don't think we do, really, in society. We don't celebrate what makes men special or unique or makes them powerful or good. I don't think we do. Do we?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe in athletics or something like that, but
And
not
you know
anywhere
what,
else.
though? I think actually focusing on the issues of responsibility, not enough men are taking responsibility for their own actions. We're not, you know, it's all well and good to say, actually, I think we should talk about mental health and things like that more. What about fatherless homes? Men leaving their children?
Absolutely, things like that. But also, as well, to be honest, I know that loads of people are completely different, but it is actually all right to be a bloke who wants to go to the pub and have 9 pints and watch the football with his mates at the weekend.
Oh, come off it. You're not oppressed for wanting to do things like that.
No, but that's fine. I'm saying it's
I'm sorry. You know, that idea, as a camp...
But you're not
hang on.
down.
As a camp gay man, I think I know what it's like to not meet the expectations of what a man looks like. The bloke wanting to watch the footy and have 9 pints, you know, William Hague, they're not being oppressed by these structures, but men who look like me can be.
You're oppressed. Well,
yeah, that is where homophobia comes from. So the idea that people like that you just described are the victim is absurd.
I'm not saying they're a victim, I'm just saying it should be reinforced to them that that is absolutely fine. There's a difference between saying that they are victimised or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is I think sometimes they're stigmatised.
I don't think it's fine to go down to the pub and sink 9 pints if you've got a family and a wife at home. Although I think women can go for their, you know, boozy brunches.
Yeah.
Yes, so we are going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. Although I would say William Hague being the sort of figure of masculinity is one I haven't heard before.
Well, he famously drank 10 pints.
Still to come tonight, Albie is going to give us his take on a prestigious honour being given to London's Night Tsar, despite the city's dwindling nightlife. And in Carver's Palaver, is it time to bring back the quintessentially British disapproving stare to tackle antisocial behaviour? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News. Here's your weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. An unseasonably windy Saturday for many of us through today, all due to this low pressure system. We saw gusts close to 50 miles per hour, even in some inland areas of southern England, and those winds will be staying with us throughout this evening and overnight. We've also seen a good number of thunderstorms throughout the day as well. Those will continue to rumble on into the evening before eventually easing their way off a touch, but showery outbreaks of rain continuing across many locations overnight. The breeze that's in place will mean that our temperatures won't be dropping too far at all, most of us holding up around 12, 13 degrees Celsius. No, not a particularly chilly start to Sunday morning. The winds, though, will begin to ease their way down across southwestern areas of Wales into England, but it is still going to be quite breezy through Sunday for eastern coastal areas up into central Scotland. Some more persistent rain for western areas of Scotland, and again some thunderstorms possible in the east, north-east. In between some of the showers elsewhere across England and Wales, seeing highs around 20, 22 degrees Celsius. But still rather cool in that breeze that is around. The low pressure centre is going to push its way off towards Scandinavia as we move into the start of the new working week. So there will be still some outbursts of rain first thing on Monday for parts of Scotland, but they will gradually ease their way down, and most of us will then enter another day of sunshine and showers. The wind's noticeably lighter across southern areas of the UK, just the breeze still lingering on a touch more across the far north-east. Further showers as we head throughout the rest of the week as well.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not
the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you very much for sending in all your emails. Anne has written in, she says, Darren, I applaud you, young man. Every last word.
Cheers,
there
Beth.
you go.
Thank you very much.
Thumbs up for Darren. Christian says, Benjamin, right as usual.
Oh, well,
Goodness me,
there's something you don't hear every day.
Taxes for the poor, tax cuts for the rich. It's not right. Well, I actually saw another email in the inbox that said Emily was absolutely right, but there you go. There's a plus for Benjamin. Anyway, it's time for our next debate. Up next is Albie. He's going to talk about Sadiq Khan and his decision to give a prestigious honour to his night czar, despite a questionable record. Off you go, Albie.
It is Sadiq Khan's London, and we are just living it. Living in it. Is there anything else Sadiq Khan wants to do to destroy this city? Not content with expanding the ULEZ zone out to the M25 or the soaring levels of crime in London, he now has awarded his night czar, Amy LeMay, or Amy Lame, should we call her, with a salary increase of 40%. She's now paid £116,000 for doing Sweet FA. She's also recently been given a prestigious award by the City of London Corporation, the Freedom of the City of London, one of the oldest honours of London, given to esteemed Londoners for all of their work enriching this city. But what has she actually done during her time as Sadiq Khan's nightlife czar? Well, since 2016, we've seen 37% of London's nightlife venues close. This woman, Amy LeMay, also bills herself as an LGBTQ advocate, while 60% of London's LGBTQ nightlife venues have closed in the last 10 years. And yet this is the woman who Sadiq Khan gives pay rise. This is the woman who the City of London Corporation awards with one of the most prestigious awards in the whole of London. We need to get back to basics. If someone's not good at their job, they need to be given the sack, not given an award. And I hope that at the next mayoral election in 2023, we vote in a Conservative.
Well,
Albie, why do you think that's not going to happen, though? You know, if we look at the two candidates, they're not exactly setting the world alight, are they? As in the two that have got through to the final for the mayoralty, as in to be the Conservative candidate.
Well, I actually had the pleasure of interviewing both Moz Hussein and Susan Hall in my capacity as the Vice Chair for the LGBT Conservatives, and I actually thought they were two very interesting candidates. And if we actually look at the statistics, some of them which I just read out about the nightlife closures that we've seen in London, about crime surging, about ULEZ being expanded out to the M25. I actually think there's a groundswell of support in London for change because Sadiq's not working.
It is absolutely horrendous what Sadiq Khan has done to this city.
Precisely. But Sadiq Khan's your man, isn't he, though, Benjamin? Are you happy that he has given this Amy LeMay a 40% pay rise for a record of failure?
Look, whenever people talk about ULEZ, I think they're doing a homophobic hate crime, to be honest. It's such a strange name for this pollution thing. Look, I think Sadiq Khan is a fantastic mayor of London because he understands that this is a city of diverse, liberal people from all across the globe who are pushing forward. And you might be small-minded bigots, but he isn't, and most Londoners aren't.
I think it's small-minded not to answer the question which I asked you, which is about whether or not you are happy that Sadiq Khan has given Amy LeMay a 40% pay rise for a record of failure.
Well, look, I think there are attitudes to things like nightclubs are changing. You know, people just a bit younger than us don't tend to go out in a way that was culturally normal to generations before them. So I think it's got far more to do with that than this woman.
Can I just say, because, you know, a lot of people will be watching this right now that aren't in London and don't give two hoots about London. This, for me, is a story more about a nationwide issue of failure being rewarded because people tick the right box.
Absolutely.
You've got people who happen to move in the right circles, who happen to, you know, represent the right kind of aspects of life. Are they, you know, in some kind of group? Are they maybe they represent a particular diversity box, etc. And they get shimmied up the ladder and they go, yeah, it's all right to toss the eco stuff as well. Oh, this person cares about planting trees in Gambia. Great, let's give them an extra 100 grand a year. Meanwhile, you've got people who are... This all stems as well, can I just say, from having no winners and losers on sports day. The second we started giving fat kids medals, the world went to...
And that's why you lost all of your weight, Patrick.
Yeah.
You wanted a medal.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that you actually raised what's going on outside London. So let's look at Manchester, our second city. Sorry, Birmingham, it's not you. If we look at Manchester, for example, the night czar in Manchester is a brilliant man called Sacha Lord. He does the job for free. Nightlife in Manchester is booming. Why is it that the Labour-led London mayor can't implement some of the policies of his Labour-led colleague up in Manchester?
I'll tell you, all he cares about, and you can look at his Twitter feed for evidence of this, all he cares about is virtue signalling. He did a whole commission to get rid of statues that he thinks don't fit with our diverse community in London. As if getting rid of statues is what people in London actually care about. He talks about pollution, yet he doesn't talk about the fact that he is raising the cost of living for normal people, hard-working people in London, further and further and further afield. He doesn't talk about knife crime. He'd rather pontificate about Donald Trump and his visit to London. It is pathetic. He's the worst mayor ever, and it's shame on Londoners for voting for him.
If you're worried about the raising cost of living, then wait till you find out who's in government, because they've done a lot more than Sadiq Khan has.
It's a radical shift for Sadiq Khan, given some of his previous work, of course, for a lawyer for a rather fruity group that anyone can Google.
But on rewarding failure, Darren, there's been a lot of criticism of Boris Johnson's honours list as rewarding failure. Do you think that there is a broader problem, as Patrick is saying, that awards and honours are given to people in this country who don't deserve them?
Absolutely. I mean, if I can give you a personal anecdote, I went through a very public court case against the Electoral Commission, a quango in this country that regulates elections, and there was failure across the piece there. They were either promoted or moved elsewhere in the civil service on plum jobs, nice gold-plated pensions. That, to me, is the ultimate act of reward and failure, and this happens across the piece. We never sack people from the civil service, even when they've been shown to do wrong. That regulator actually apologised to me, yet no one was reprimanded at that moment. So I do think Patrick is absolutely right. I mean, Sadiq Khan spends most of his time talking about new plaques, gay plaques. Do you know the blue plaques that we've got around London? He wants gay ones. I think Benjamin's going to get one, and it's going to say Benjamin was wrong about everything. and we'll put it outside your house, Benjamin.
Look, you have a point about failure being rewarded, because that's how Liz Truss and Boris Johnson became Prime Minister.
Well, you know, it's an interesting one, but look, for me personally, I do just think there are certain cohorts of individuals who manage to fall upwards, whereas...
But is that the whole public sector? Is there a broader problem with the whole public sector where it's all very cushy at the top and you get moved from being a quango at a regulator to the BBC to being a parliament to being a permanent secretary in a government department?
Bottom, though, you know,
how do we...
The upper echelons.
Of course, but how do we change that more broadly, Benjamin?
I mean, look, I don't accept the premise of the comment. You know, this constant attack on civil servants has coincided perfectly with useless governments that are failing to achieve the things they're elected for.
Let's take one of these
and I think it is used as an excuse. The upper echelons that aren't doing their jobs are the people in the cabinet for some years now. People like Boris Johnson, who some of you love, who went and put the taxes up, gave you all the COVID restrictions, and then you sit there like he's some libertarian blessing.
I find it staggering that for a lot of people in a lot of workplaces right now, they are so target-driven. There will be a load of people watching this where their job at the end of every year basically is dictated to by some pen pusher who sits down in front and goes, did you hit this target? Did you hit that target? Meanwhile, you've got people who confront up massive organisations, all get promoted within certain civil service groups or political roles, etc., who at the end of every single year, if you said, what have you achieved? They would honestly have to say, I've made it much worse.
Well, may I just say, if you've looked at a form that you have to fill out when you apply for a job in the civil service, some of these non-exec jobs at the tops of the department, it is a box-ticking exercise. You are going to find it hard if you are a white man. You certainly are, because there are absolutely no boxes you can tick.
And yet the majority of senior managers in the civil service are probably white men.
But that's because they've been there since they were, you know, X
I'm
years
just
old.
not sure about that argument, but I think more broadly, how is it that we get the right people into the civil service to actually reform the public services so they deliver instead of failure, like we've seen with Amy LeMay in London?
I think you could make it a better place to work, so you wouldn't have to make them sit through a huge amount of woke diversity training courses and all of this tosh.
But Patrick, There are, even in the civil service, I had a friend that worked in the civil service, and you had to take in your own tea and coffee and sugar. All they provided...
But
all they provided was hot water.
You can't all have your luxury rider at GB News.
Most private companies
only blue M&Ms.
Tea, coffee for people. They certainly do at
Do you
GB
know what
News.
I've heard from
Are we going to get good people in the civil service if we don't even give them tea and coffee?
What I've heard from talented civil servants is that what is the frustration is that you can't sack anyone who's useless. And there is a lot of incompetence. There are a lot of very hard-working, intelligent people in there who want to do a good day's graft, and then there are just so many people who just clock in, clock out and do nothing. So I think that's the issue.
I actually think that's a broader problem with the country.
Well,
We're
yes, there
very
is that
inefficient.
We have got too many lazy, self-entitled people.
Sick note Britain.
We are sick note Britain.
But enough about
Patrick,
us.
that's enough about Benjamin. Still ahead, in Carver's Palaver, Emily gives her take on the disapproven stare. Do it. There we are. Could it be the solution to antisocial behaviour? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, the push to feminise men has got to stop. It's not a crime being a bloke. So-called toxic masculinity served us well in 2 world wars. It's time to let boys be boys. In My Take at 10, if you thought Joe Biden was confused, that's the least of it, as a video shows him pretending to bite a little girl and sniff her hair. Creepy Joe should be nowhere near children, let alone the White House. Plus 80s pop icon Teresa Bazar, showbiz legends Christopher Biggins and Kim Woodburn, my pundits and tomorrow's papers. We're live from 9.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, cheers very much for your emails. Freddie's written in. He says, very interesting show tonight. Emily, Darren and Patrick get my top awards tonight. Benjamin gets the wooden spoon for sarcasm and silly, naive views. Well, David says, Radio 4 has Women's Hour. Why isn't there a Men's Hour? Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? I don't know why you're listening to the BBC, though, love. Thanks, everyone who's got in touch. It's time now for our final debate. Emily Carver is going to discuss whether us Brits should bring back the disapproving stare to combat irksome antisocial behaviour. Here we go, Emily.
Yes, everyone's seen what I mean. So, I like to keep an eye on global news, and one story caught my eye. Over in Hong Kong, the public are being encouraged to stare disapprovingly at those who break the law and smoke in public spaces. Now, I don't wish to emulate Hong Kong in banning cigarettes in public spaces, and I certainly don't want to see us emulate the Hong Kong authorities. But it got me thinking. People in this country should feel more comfortable in letting it be known that they disapprove of certain behaviour. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's noticed that people can't behave themselves in this country. In the year to April 2023, the police recorded over 1 million antisocial reports. I imagine you can multiply that by at least 10 to get the real number. So, from groups of young men loitering on the street smoking weed, to teenagers riding around on bicycles intimidating local people, to grown men and women blaring their music out loud on public transport, to people leaving dog poo on the pavement. Now, I don't want a return to the curtain twitching of lockdown. We all remember that. But I reckon bringing back the glare, the disapproving stare, might just be a good idea. Why shouldn't people feel emboldened to show their dissatisfaction with people behaving as if they own the public square? Well, there you go.
What I want to know, Patrick, as the husband-to-be, do you get this disapproving stare at home?
Oh, yes, I sit in one constant disapproving stare.
Does it work?
Yeah, well, it does actually, it does. No, but I actually do agree with you. You know, a big personal bugbear of mine is when people get on public transport and play music out of their phone without any headphones. And that it's just annoying, right? So I do stare at them. But the difference with them, what I will say is, the difference there is, if they're children, then I am annoyed and I will stare. But if they're young adults, I think they might stab me.
But why just stare at them? I was just thinking when you were saying that monologue, when did the disapproving stare ever go away? Whenever I see people, children or adults, play music on the bus or on the tube, I tell them to turn it off or put their headphones in.
You are unique.
I am very
People
open.
don't.
And you've never been beaten
sharing,
up?
No, never. Maybe it's because I'm black, they're scared I'm going to beat them up. And I give them a disapproving stare and tell them to turn their music off, and they stop.
I think the problem with a disapproving stare is that I am a very passive-aggressive person.
Yeah.
And I will do the disapproving stare, and then they couldn't care less. And then I get really wound up. I'm like, I'm staring really hard. Why aren't you reacting?
Well, when I say
I don't think it's very constructive.
When I say disapproving stare, I mean more that we should be showing our dissatisfaction. So, for example, going up to the kids and saying, you know what, you turn that music down. Or, you know, getting involved if you see a bit of petty crime. You know, tell them that that is not on. Or, you know, it's just the stare is just, you know, the gateway drug, as it were, to actually trying to get involved and look after your community. Now, I do think the biggest challenge to what I've just said is the fear that you could get stabbed if you get involved. But at the moment, you have people running riot in public spaces and everyone keeps their heads down because everyone's too scared to do anything about it.
But it does start, sorry to sort of say, this all starts at the home, right? So when you see kids out and about, like I saw the other day, they're on one of these bikes, some guy's coming the other way and they lob a drink over him and then they go around and they're throwing stones at cars and I think, you know what? You've got bad parents. You've got bad parents. You were raised badly.
But this is the thing. Should we all behave like parents or not? Because some parents get very, very annoyed if a stranger or someone, you know, in the restaurant or on the bus behaves like a parent to their children.
Yeah.
People get very funny about that, Albie. Do you think we all need to be more parents to bad kids?
I think that sounds a bit nanny-ish to me. I think that people's parents adults actually need to take responsibility for their children. I mean, you read awful statistics about children in primary school now, people in reception, going in not properly toilet trained, they can't turn book pages. You know, it's like there's this whole mentality that I'm just going to leave it all to the state to fix this problem. And I think we need more personal responsibility.
Messed kids up a fair bit, hasn't it? But I actually think, you know, on this show we've covered before this misery that's been on TikTok terrorising the population. I actually think we need to bring back the cane so that little sods like that, you know, face retribution in schools and face discipline. It's discipline, it's respect. All of these things have been lost from society.
Is it also a policing problem? And is it a problem that antisocial behaviour has grown as police numbers have fallen? I know that Suella Braverman has rehired all the police that we sacked during the austerity years, but the Conservatives still did sack a lot of police.
The thing is, if they don't care about police, why would they care about austerity?
We'll have to end it there. Unfortunately, that conversation could have definitely gone on, but I'm sure you at home agree it's been a fantastic panel tonight. Cheers very much to everyone on it, and cheers to you watching at home. Frank's written in, he says, I always got the stare as a youngster, and it always put me back on the straight and narrow when I was in the wrong. It's about respecting your elders. Well, there we are. Next up, Mark Dolan. Cheers for watching. See you next week.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. An unseasonably windy Saturday for many of us through today, all due to this low pressure system. We saw gusts close to 50 miles per hour, even in some inland areas of southern England, and those winds will be staying with us throughout this evening and overnight. We've also seen a good number of thunderstorms throughout the day as well. Those will continue to rumble on into the evening before eventually easing their way off a touch, but showery outbreaks of rain continuing across many locations overnight. The breeze that's in place will mean that our temperatures won't be dropping too far at all, most of us holding up around 12, 13 degrees Celsius. No, not a particularly chilly start to Sunday morning. The winds, though, will begin to ease their way down across southwestern areas of Wales into England, but it is still going to be quite breezy through Sunday for eastern coastal areas up into central Scotland. Some more persistent rain for western areas of Scotland, and again some thunderstorms possible in the east, north-east. In between some of the showers elsewhere across England and Wales, seeing highs around 20, 22 degrees Celsius. But still rather cool in that breeze that is around. The low pressure centre is going to push its way off towards Scandinavia as we move into the start of the new working week. So there will be still some outbursts of rain first thing on Monday for parts of Scotland, but they will gradually ease their way down, and most of us will then enter another day of sunshine and showers. The wind's noticeably lighter across southern areas of the UK, just the breeze still lingering on a touch more across the far north-east. Further showers as we head throughout the rest of the week as well.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, the push to feminise men has got to stop. It's not a crime being a bloke. So-called toxic masculinity served us well in 2 world wars. It's time to let boys be boys. My Mark Meets guest is 80s pop icon, one half of Dollar, Teresa Bazar, who's making a welcome return to the stage with a brand new tour. In my Take at 10, if you thought Joe Biden was confused, that's the least of your worries, as a video shows him pretending to bite a little girl and sniff her hair. Creepy Joe should be nowhere near children or the White House. So, a busy 2 hours to come. It is Saturday night. We've got lots of debate and plenty of fun along the way. You won't want to go anywhere else. Get something cold and fizzy in the fridge or fire up the kettle. Tear open the jam roly-polies and let's get to work. And we start with the headlines and Ray Addison.
Good evening. Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom and our top story this hour. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace will quit the government at the next cabinet reshuffle and not stand as an MP at the next general election. That's according to reports in the Sunday Times. It follows speculation that Mr Wallace would leave in the autumn after 4 years in the role. He's currently the local MP for Wyre and Preston North, which will disappear at the next election after boundary changes. It comes just days after the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, rejected comments from Mr Wallace suggesting that Ukraine should show, quote, gratitude, end quote, for the military support it has been given. Emergency services are tackling a fire at the Royal Albion Hotel in Brighton, with 15 fire trucks currently in attendance. Footage of the blaze has been shared online, with witnesses saying the flames spread quickly across the roof and top floor of the building, with winds spurring on the flames. People have been moved a safe distance away from the incident. Brighton and Hove City Council have announced the closure of nearby roads. Sussex Police is asking members of the public to avoid the seafront area and find alternative routes of travel. Parts of the UK have been experiencing strong winds and thunderstorms, with yellow Met Office warnings in place across the south of England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. The Goodwood Festival of Speed had to cancel today's events for the first time in its 30-year history, and London's Kaleidoscope Festival at Alexandra Palace has been called off as well. Well, junior doctors have been striking for a third day in England. The BMA has warned the government that their members will not back down on demands for a 35% pay rise. That's despite the Prime Minister adopting the recommendations of independent pay review bodies and making a final pay offer of 6%. The 5-day strike, the longest in NHS history, runs until Tuesday morning. And some international news, and one of the last 2 ships exporting grain from Ukraine under an agreement with Russia has arrived in Istanbul. The Black Sea grain deal, which expires on Monday, has enabled Ukraine to export grain and food safely over the past year, despite the war. Ukraine is a major supplier of key crops like sunflower oil and barley. Moscow is threatening to pull out of the agreement and is calling for Western sanctions to ease. We're on TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn too. This is GB News. Back now to Mark.
Thanks, Ray. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Happy Saturday to one and all. In my big opinion, the push to feminise men has got to stop. It's not a crime being a bloke. So-called toxic masculinity